Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, a group of people from somewhere near Vanuatu and Fiji decided to sail north into the vast unknown. They don't know what's out there, but they decide to go anyway. That's how Micronesia begins. And these first people, they were the Austronesians. They're master navigators with Southeast Asian roots who essentially cracked the code of the Pacific Ocean before anyone else even tried. They read the stars, the currents, the wind. And one by one, they found these islands: Yap, Chuk, Pohnpei, Koshri. And over the span of hundreds of years, they settled all of them. But interestingly, not all islands were the same. Each one grew its own language, its own culture, and yes, its own identity. By the time the rest of the world had barely figured out long-distance sailing, the people of Yap had already established what historians call the Yapese Empire. It's a sophisticated tribute and trade system stretching across dozens of surrounding atolls. I mean, that's cool and all, but I find that the most interesting part is that they even had their own currency. And it's not like the money we know today. Back then it was just massive stone discs called rhinestones that were carved from limestone quarried in Palo and hauled across open ocean on rafts. Obviously you can't put that in your wallet, so how did people carry it around? Well, actually, they didn't. The stones were so heavy that when you bought something, the stone stayed exactly where it was. Everyone just collectively agreed that you were the new owner. Talk about an ancient, unhackable ledger system. And then there's Madol. Built sometime around the 1100s on the island of Pohnpei, Madol is essentially a city constructed on top of the ocean. It's composed of nearly 100 artificial islands. And these islands were made of interlocking basalt logs, some weighing up to 50 tons, all rising straight out of a lagoon. Imagine, there were no cranes or machinery back then, so how did these islands get made? For a long time it baffled researchers, but local legends say sorcerers levitated the stones into place. Today, archaeologists believe the reality was a mix of intense human muscle, clever raft transport from the other side of the island, and coconut trunk ramps. Though you can't argue the sorcerer version is a pretty fun story to tell. So yeah, that's where things stand when the 1500s arrived. Micronesia had thriving civilizations, ancient trade routes, and a stone city that in a way defies explanation. Then the Europeans show up, much like they always do in our stories. Who came first this time, you ask? Well, that's going to be the Spanish explorers. They came to this place looking for the Spice Islands, but instead they stumbled into a massive archipelago. By the late 1600s, Spain officially claimed the islands, naming them the Caroline Islands after their king, Charles II. Despite this, Spain mostly left the islands alone. That is until 1886, when they finally tried to enforce control. Well, the people of Pohnpei didn't really like that, so they responded the way displeased people usually did: rebellion. Then in 1899, Spain, having just lost the Spanish-American War and needing cash, sold the islands to Germany. Germany then set up a copru trade, which is basically the dried coconut meat used to make coconut oil. It was a huge cash crop back then, but Germany's harsh labour laws surrounding it, you guessed it, also faced a major rebellion in Pohnpei. In 1914, Japan walked in at the start of World War I and took everything over. Sure, Japan's tenure started reasonably enough. They invested in infrastructure, developed agriculture, but they also excluded Micronesians from any role in their own government and forced the Japanese language on everything. Yeah, so there's that. And by the 1930s, Japan was quietly turning the island of Chuk into one of the most heavily fortified naval bases in the entire Pacific. Which is exactly why in February 1944, the United States launched Operation Hailstone. It was 2 days of brutal, relentless airstrikes on Chuk Lagoon. When it was all over 40 Japanese ships lay on the ocean floor. To this day, they're still there, and divers fly in from all over the world to get a glimpse of this fascinating piece of history. But their history didn't end there. By the time World War II ended, Micronesia had been passed between 4 colonial powers in less than 60 years, and its economy was practically in shambles. In 1947, the US took over under a UN trusteeship, but having gone through multiple international leaderships, the Micronesians just weren't interested. So they started negotiating for self-governance in the late 1960s, and through the 1970s the islands debated their future. Some groups split off. These included the Marianas, the Marshalls, and Palo, each going their own way. Which, if you're interested to see how their story unfolded, I'll leave the links to their videos in the description below. In the end, Micronesia was left with 4 states: Yap, Chuk, Pohnpei, and Koshri. Up until this point, they were still pretty much independent islands, but in 1979, they ratified a constitution together and became the Federated States of Micronesia. Come 1986, they signed the Compact of Free Association with the United States. I know what you're thinking, but I thought they didn't want to be under colonial power. And you'd be right, it's just that in this scenario, Micronesia still had full internal sovereignty, with the US only responsible for defence and providing financial support. In 1991, Micronesia joined the United Nations. After 4,000 years of building, trading, resisting, surviving, and rebuilding, Micronesia finally had its own name on the door. But here's the thing about getting your sovereignty that people don't talk about enough. What you do with it depends entirely on what you have to work with. So, you just inherited your sovereignty. Congratulations! Now someone hands you a map of your country and you realise something. Your land practically stretches nearly 2,700 kilometres, or 1,860 miles across the Pacific. Yet, your total land area is only about 702 square kilometres, which is around 271 square miles. That's it. And that amount of land, that's scattered across 607 islands and atolls, of which only around 65 are actually inhabited. That's Micronesia for you, and that's probably why you have a hard time looking for it on a map. It's not like the countries we know that are big clusters of land. Micronesia is made up of 4 island groups strung across the western Pacific like a broken necklace, sitting almost exactly between Hawaii and Indonesia. These 4 states make up the Federated States, which I mentioned earlier: Yap, Chuk, Pohnpei, and Koshri. Each one is completely different from the others. And I mean completely. Yap in the west is geologically unusual for the Pacific. It's not a volcanic island. Instead, it's made up of uplifted metamorphic rock, formed near the Yap Trench where the Pacific Plate dives under the Philippine Plate. So instead of Moana-type beaches, you get gentler slopes, coastal swamps, and a string of over 100 outer atolls trailing off into the open ocean. That's Yap. Chuk is a whole other world entirely. For one, there's a lagoon here that's got 2,000 square kilometres, or 800 square miles of enclosed water, ringed by a coral reef with volcanic islands poking out from inside it. Oh, and it's historically been the most densely populated state in the country, with nearly 50,000 people squeezed into about 127 square kilometres, or 49 square miles of land. Then there's Pohnpei, the biggest island in the Federation. This is where you'll find Mount Nanlahunt, which rises to around 760 metres, or about 2,493 feet. Plus, this island is home to the city of Palikir, the national capital. So now that leaves us with Koshri. Among all the 4 federated states, this is the smallest one. It's essentially just one volcanic island, with a single lush, mountainous mass at the far eastern end of the chain. The rest of the country? It's all water. Which, let me tell you, on land, Micronesia is tiny. But its EEZ, or Exclusive Economic Zone, covers close to 3 million square kilometres, which is about 1.16 million square miles of Pacific Ocean. That puts it in the top 15 countries in the world by ocean jurisdiction. And that size difference between land and sea, that practically changes everything about how this country works. Okay, so we know now how Micronesia looks on the map. But that's not the only reason we're here, is it? I'm sure for a lot of us, we're also interested in learning about how a country like that runs. And well, the answer is a fine line between clever and complicated. Just think about it. It's got a population of just under 100,000 people. It's got no oil, no minerals worth exporting, and definitely no Amazon warehouses. On top of that, the islands here are so spread out that getting a package from one end of the country to the other takes longer than flying from New York to London. So it's only natural to wonder, how do they actually operate? How does the money flow? Well, Micronesia figured something out. See that ocean surrounding every single one of those islands? It's ridiculously full of tuna. And the best part is, Micronesia doesn't even need to catch it. They just walk up to foreign fishing fleets and say, If you want in, you have to pay up. Immediately, they pull in roughly $60 to $70 million a year just in licensing fees. Every year, like clockwork, and that's one piece of the puzzle. The bigger piece is the United States. Remember the Compact of Free Association we talked about earlier? Well, it was renewed again in 2024, so for the next 20 years, Micronesia will get a massive $3.3 billion package. That breaks down to about $140 million per year in grants, alongside millions more pumped straight into a national trust fund. That should be enough to cover government salaries, schools, hospitals and roads. Which is a lot, I know. That's why, without it, there's a good chance that Micronesia might not survive. But if there's anything you need to know about the people here, it's that they're survivors. One way or the other, they're going to figure something out. Just look at the way they farm and fish. People grow taro, breadfruit, bananas, coconuts, among other things. They eat what they can and import the rest. Sounds straightforward, but we forget. Importing anything to a remote Pacific island isn't cheap. You have to think about the cost of fuel, food, machinery, and medicine. Obviously, it all has to come from somewhere, and that somewhere compounds into higher prices for everyday people. Given all that, Micronesia's GDP is sitting right around $500 million, which is not the best. Its growth rate is hovering just above 1%. Now, for reference, its neighbouring country, Palau, is growing significantly faster. That difference? Tourism. Palau went all in on it, while Micronesia hasn't quite gotten there yet. Probably because flights are expensive, accommodation is limited, and there's no coordinated tourism pulling it all together. So the visitors who could be coming mostly aren't. Yet. But perhaps you'll be the one to change that trend, because I'm putting amazing flight and accommodation deals for Micronesia in the description below. Before you get excited and book your flights here, there's one more thing you need to understand, and that, ladies and gents, is their culture. So Micronesian culture starts with the same thing. This whole story started with the ocean. These people, they weren't just people who happened to live near water. They were people who learned to master it. Take the Yapese navigators, for example. They didn't use maps the same way we do. They read the stars, the currents, the behaviour of clouds, the movement of sea life. How many people in your life do you think can do just that? Not a lot, I'm assuming. But that's everyday life here. And those that have mastered the sea, they pass on that knowledge to the rest of their families. Because here, community and relationships are a big thing. Interestingly enough, in most Micronesian societies, lineages, including extended family networks, are matrilineal, meaning traditionally your identity and your land rights came through your mother's line. That's a little fun fact for you. Now fast forward to today, about 97% of Micronesians are Christian. They speak English infused with plenty of American slang. They eat imported rice that doesn't grow on their islands. They watch American TV. And yes, the 4 colonial powers will leave marks, and that's just how history works. But here's what's still here. Besides their deep-rooted traditions, there's the weaving, the stick dances, the canoe building, the chiefly systems, the oral histories being recited. That's what Micronesia's about. And honestly, doesn't that make you want to go see it for yourself? Again, you'll find everything you need down in the description. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, you'll love this next one.